What's happening, everybody? I'm Steve, and welcome back to Junkdrummer TV, where I give my hot takes, my analysis, and my initial reactions to the drummers of today and yesterday, and maybe tomorrow if I stick around that long. I am a professional drum teacher and a gigging musician, and I have been for the last 20 years. So on today's episode, we're going to be analyzing and reacting to my favorite jazz drummer, Tony Williams, and of course we're going to watch him playing with Miles Davis. So you can probably infer by my accent that I did not grow up around jazz music. I didn't grow up around much of anything, but there was the one time in high school where I got curious about this thing they called jazz music, and I went to my assistant band director. I'll never forget this. I went to my assistant band director and I was like, I want to know about jazz. I don't know anything about it. I've just read about it in Modern Drummer magazine. What do you think this is, or can you help me out? And my band director gave me 2 David Sanborn records. So I went home and I listened to those David Sanborn records and quickly found out that I didn't like jazz, or at least what I was told jazz was. Like most musicians, unfortunately, these days, I found out about jazz music when I got to college. I was in music school and I was on scholarship, and when you're on scholarship, they make you play in all the ensembles. Hell, they even made me play in the handbell choir, but I also had to be in the saxophone quintet and also had to be in the big band. And I was a punk rock drummer from nowhere, and I didn't know anything about jazz, so I immediately started trying to explore that music, and I ate it up, and I went to the music library every day and listened to it, and man, I just did not get it. I was coming from playing in a punk band in high school, you know, playing like Rancid covers and, you know, the really crappy songs we wrote. And then I am just a freshman in college, and I have a mean big band professor saying, play jazz, swing. And I had no idea what he was talking about. So, you know, I went through and I tried to get it. Then I came across this track by Miles Davis, and of course by then I knew who Miles Davis was. And I'd heard Kind of Blue, and I was like, nah, that's cool. It didn't hit me. Then I heard a track called Pinocchio, and it's on the ESP record, and it was a lightning bolt to my cranium. I'd never heard that much creativity, that kind of avant-garde shaping of rhythms and using of textures and just using parts of your drums to just make a jazz noise in a spot. I'd never heard anything like that. Man, it blew me up. So after that, I became a Tony Williams fanatic, and I listened to everything that he was on. Miles Davis, of course, is who he's famous for playing with. He also was a solo artist. He played with as a sideman for tons of people. The big record that I like of his as a sideman that's not with Miles Davis is Out to Lunch by Eric Dolphy. I can't recommend that record enough. So that's my rundown on Mr. Anthony Williams, and we're going to listen to him playing with the second great Miles Davis quintet, and they're going to be playing Gingerbread Boy. Miles Davis is a first Hall of Fame cool guy. He was a trendsetter, not just music, but with fashion as well. Man, this is so much faster than the original. Oh man, I love him so much. This is really fast. That's blazing. That is blazing. Man, try to play that jazz pattern that fast for like a minute. See what kind of chops you really have. Something that you'll notice that Tony's doing here, this reaction is going to be a lot more analyzing what's going on, because I'm going to be honest, I'm a junior varsity jazz player. There's a lot of stuff that Tony still does that's way over my head, so I'm going to be talking more conceptually about what he does. He was, I don't know if he was the first, but he was the first of that wave of jazz and, you know, bop players. You know, think of this as being hard bop. Jazz has many subgenres as heavy metal, as weirdly as it is. But he was one of the first of those bop drummers that got away from the traditional jazz pattern. Now he's playing it and he's referencing it a lot in here, but he's playing a lot of just straight eighth notes, straight quarter notes. got to bring that back because that's a beautiful example of Tony's comping, the way he comped behind soloists, and particularly the way that he would comp behind Miles. I really think that Tony Williams came along at the right time for Miles. If you think about the drummers of Miles before Tony, you think of like Philly Joe Jones and whoever that guy is that's on Kind of Blue. I'll write it right here because I can't think of it right now. Most of those drummers were groove, swinging, laid back, like kind of cool jazz guys. They didn't play with a whole bunch of crazy over the top chops, and they didn't play like a hard bop style like the way you would play behind like Charlie Parker or John Coltrane. It was very kind of laid back, and it was cool, right? Those drummers were all Jimmy Cobb. That's who it is. Jimmy Cobb and Philly Joe, they were all really laid back. They're kind of like jazz versions of like Stan Lynch. I know I'm going to get killed for that, but they let the song happen over this really beautiful swing that they would play. Tony came in like a madman and came in and started kicking everybody's ass on the stage. I'm going to bring this back a little bit. Listen to how Miles will play a short passage, and then Tony will play back at him, and he kind of drops in between all these spaces that Miles sets up for him. He's obviously doing that. He's there to play off of Tony. That was the best part of the second great Miles Davis quintet. I'm going to bring this back and check this out. I'm not going to talk through this, but check this out. There it is, filling in those spaces. Tony's telling boss man, I'm hearing you. I hear you, and I'm reacting. This is the big difference of jazz playing, jazz drumming as compared to rock playing. I've talked about in other videos. Rock playing is foundational. And this is, oh God, that flam lick that he does. Man, and he is just bashing. This is not your grandpa's jazz. He is crashing the shit out of that ride cymbal. Just look at that. This band they read each other's minds. This band was so connected when they played. I think that this is one of the greatest bands that's ever been assembled in any kind of music. This is Tony Williams, this is Ron Carter, this is Wayne Shorter, and this is Herbie Hancock. And the telepathy that they had was no one had heard anything like this before. Like, in between these choruses, in jazz music we call the chorus where the solo goes, Tony just stops to move his hi-hat. The other members heard it, played around with it, and then they come back and don't even miss a note, dude. This is, you can't rehearse this. So big buzz roll down, move the hi-hat, come back in. Okay, so you're going to hear how much different comping is going on behind Wayne. When Tony was playing with Miles, they were boxing, they were playing tennis. And he's going to start bringing it back up a little bit more here, but at the beginning of this, he had just played a bunch of insanity, and now he brought it back down and he was playing more just like a traditional, groove and jazz player. But then that's going to come back, and it's going to be a spiked baseball bat to your soul. I'd give anything to know what it feels like to play music like that. And changing the feel right out underneath it. Playing in halftime now. That's just a beautiful choice. Playing music and making music is about choices. He just played 2 full choruses of blazing, hitting you over the top of the head badassery at a breakneck tempo. And at the end of Wayne's solo, they decided, let's go to halftime here and play that underneath the piano solo. And if you've ever played in an acoustic situation, man, it's really hard, especially if you're just used to, projecting like a rock drummer. If you're playing strictly acoustic, when the piano solos, man, you better have a touch, because you got to bring all that business way down so you can hear the piano. Yeah, a little more traditional, almost sound like like a jazz blues thing here, especially in the notes that Ron Carter's playing. Playing that quarter note triplet, and then almost making it feel like it's even slower than halftime, but it's not. And then that quarter note triplet became the pulse for a little while. Oh God, man, this band's so great. They did impossible things minute to minute. There it is. There it comes back. There's that original tempo. Not original tempo, original feel. Goes back into the double time. He's not done a lot of, there he does, but he hasn't done a whole lot of, like even a lot of drum work there, because he's keeping the volume down so you can hear Brother Herbie. This little bomb right there in the snare drum. Oh man. Just always forget how much I love him, and I love this band. And he's really young. That's another thing. Tony Williams started playing with Miles Davis when he was 17 years old. I know that he had played with Jackie McLean when he was 16. Or McLean, I don't know how you say it. This dude was anointed to be one of the best drummers in the world. One of the best drummers to ever pick up drumsticks. I made a conscious decision when I started this channel that you will never hear me say blank is the greatest drummer in the world. I'm never going to say it. I'm in no place to say it, and I think it's a silly argument. But if you had to, Tony Williams would be in like the top 2 or 3. When you just think about him being able to do anything on the instrument that his overly creative mind could think of, he could do it. He could do anything on the drums at any time. Space right there, those snare drum hits. Man, he's such a big hitter as a jazz player. Jazz drumming, you always think of like, we have light touches and we're really laid back and quiet. Man, he was killing it. Killing the drums. Him and Elvin Jones were the ones that really brought volume to jazz drumming. Miles Davis is just thinking. He just always looked like he was thinking about how to change the world of music next. He did about 3 or 4 times. Okay, so real quick, the way that a traditional jazz tune or standard is set up, it starts out with what we call the head, and the head is the melody, and the melody is what makes that song the song, right? And then you throw solos around. So the song was set up with the head or the melody, and then they did 3 choruses of solos, and then you end with the head, and that's what's going on right here. He was playing jazz in a way that back then could get you fired. Because man, this is right after, Philly Joe and Papa Joe and those cats that were more laid back. Him and Art Blakey they brought fire to their playing. Now it's almost like they're kind of doing like a New Orleans soloing thing. Him and Wayne Shore just kind of soloing back and forth. Just very big in like Dixieland and New Orleans jazz. Man, those Italian cut suits Miles Davis played. This band did a lot of starting and stopping songs like this. where they would kind of creep into a song and then creep out. He's having a hard time keeping that floor or that hi-hat staying where he needs to be. That gear wasn't so strong back then like it is now. Man, god damn it, I love Tony Williams. I don't listen to jazz as much as I need to. I don't even know why, like, but I will go through spurts where I'll just like, I gotta listen to jazz. I always think of like when my creativity tank is either empty or stagnant, I will go on a tear of listening to jazz music, because those abstract ideas that come off the cuff, that aren't pre-planned, like was 90% of what we just watched. I think that's where the real sparks of creativity comes from. You know, there's so many great, you know, rock musicians who were jazz players too, like Steve Lukather. Think of like him. Steve Smith, the drummer for Journey, is a big time jazz guy. I could go on about all those cats that kind of live in both worlds. Larry Carlton, of course. But I always listen to jazz to kind of just like get the doldrums of just, you know, my playing out of me, and to just get reinvigorated with these new fresh ideas, because I don't really listen to jazz that much anymore. There was a time when I listened to jazz so much that like my girlfriends wanted to break up with me because I was playing that music that didn't have vocals. But Tony Williams, he's my favorite jazz drummer. Of course, we'll do other jazz drummers. We're definitely going to do Elvin Jones. We're definitely going to do Art Blakey. But I wanted to start out. I did a Buddy Rich video, you know, big band playing. Please go check that out. This is the first of like, you know, jazz, bebop, you know, small ensemble jazz player. And my first guy had to be Tony, because I love him. It sucked, man. Right as I got into him and was like planning on like, I am going to, you know, go on a trip to see Tony Williams play. He died in like 97, I think, of a heart attack, complications from a surgery or anything. So I no more found this drummer that inspired me to practice and you know, because he let me know how far away I was from the goal of being a good musician, and I wanted to go on a, you know, what do you call that, a pilgrimage to see Tony Williams. And he died like, you know, 2 years, I think, into my college career. So, people, I know that jazz isn't a big popular sport anymore, but any of you younger listeners, and man, especially anyone that's listening, please go back and watch this without my nonsense over top of it, link in the description. And man, just listen to Tony Williams, because you will find things that are played on the drums that you never thought was possible. I love you, Tony Williams. You made me practice a whole lot. You also made me realize that I did not have enough talent to be a jazz player, and I thank you for both of those things. So if you enjoyed all that, please give me a double tap on the subscription and the notification bell. Please feel free to like, comment, and share. And if you want to grow up to be like Tony, you're not going to grow up to be like Tony, but if you want to try, keep practicing until it's easy.